Penguin Audio presents If Kennedy Lived, the First and Second Terms of President John F. Kennedy, An Alternate History, by Jeff Greenfield. Read by Jeff Greenfield and Tom Stechschulte.
Preface. The Lives and Deaths of John F. Kennedy. It was Thursday, July 14, 1960, in room 9333 of the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, and Kenny O'Donnell was furious at the man he had just helped nominate for President of the United States. Again and again, John Kennedy had assured the unions, the civil rights leaders, the liberals and intellectuals whose support he needed that Texas Senator Lyndon Johnson would not be his choice for vice president. For those constituencies, the majority leader of the Senate was too tied to the corporate interests of his home state, too willing to weaken or abandon strong civil rights legislation, too much the symbol of wheeler-dealer insider politics. Yet now, little more than 12 hours after Kennedy had won a first-ballot nomination with a razor-thin margin of 5 delegates, he had offered the second slot on the ticket to Johnson, and Johnson had accepted. "I was so furious I could hardly talk," O'Donnell remembered years later. "I thought of the promises we had made, the assurances we had given. I felt we had been double-crossed." So O'Donnell demanded to confront Kennedy face to face, and the nominee complied, taking O'Donnell into the bathroom and assuring him that the job would actually diminish Johnson's power by placing him in a powerless, impotent job. "I'm 43 years old," Kennedy said, "and I'm the healthiest candidate for President of the United States. You've traveled with me enough to know that I'm not going to die in office, so the vice presidency doesn't mean anything." The man who gave his disaffected aide this reassurance had already lost a brother and a sister in airplane crashes, had almost died when his ship was destroyed in the South Pacific during World War II, had been stricken with an illness so serious in 1947 that he had been given the last rites of his church, had undergone a life-threatening operation in 1954 to save him from invalidism, an operation so serious that he was away from his Senate seat for 9 months. He had been living with a form of Addison's disease, hidden from the press and public, that required a regular dose of powerful medicine and made him live virtually every day in pain. For a man so often described as fatalistic, who on the day of his murder mused to his wife and to that same Kenny O'Donnell about the ease with which a man with a rifle could kill him, Kennedy's blithe assurance about his invulnerability to fate seems astonishing. If nothing else, his immersion in history must have taught him that 7 presidents had died in office, 3 violently, that FDR had barely escaped assassination in 1933, and that Harry Truman had been the target of assassins in 1950. Kennedy himself would escape death at the hands of a suicide bomber less than 5 months after speaking those comforting words. Maybe, though, Kennedy's words are not so astonishing. They reflect an impulse deep within the human spirit to push aside the power of random chance in favor of a more orderly, less chaotic universe. Even someone like John Kennedy, who had come close to death more than once, could casually dismiss the whole idea of considering that possibility when choosing a man to stand a heartbeat away. Many historians take the same approach in dealing with the what-ifs that drive excursions into alternate history. For them, it's at best a parlor game, at worst a nuisance. What did happen, they argue, is what matters. Playing the alternate history game is like asking, what if Spartacus had had a jet? I take a different view. Historian H.R. Trevor wrote, "At any given moment in history, there are real alternatives. How can we explain what happened and why if we only look at what happened and never consider the alternatives?" These alternatives, however, are not boundless. Asking, what if JFK had become a born-again evangelical, or what if a Soviet scientist had invented the Internet in 1965, might make for an entertaining piece of fiction, but it violates the single most critical element of alternative history, plausibility. Harvard historian Neil Ferguson, who prefers the term virtual history, says, "By narrowing down the historical alternatives we consider to those which are plausible, we solve the dilemma of choosing between a single deterministic past and an unmanageably infinite number of possible pasts."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?